لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. كيف أمسيتم؟ كيف أمسيتم؟ الحمد لله أمسينا وأمسى الملك لله والحمد لله. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. ربي أسألك خير ما في هذه الليلة وخير ما بعدها. ربي أعوذ بك من شر ما في هذه الليلة ومن شر ما بعدها. ربي أعوذ بك من الكسل وسوء الكبر. ربي أعوذ بك من عذاب في النار ومن عذاب في القبر. بسم الله الذي لا إله سواه، والحمد لله، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب زدنا علما ولا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Ya Allah, increase us in knowledge and don't allow our hearts to deviate from truth and guidance after you have shown them to us. اللهم افتح مسامع قلوبنا لذكرك. Ya Allah, please open the hearing channels of our hearts to your dhikr. Ameen. We continue, my dear brothers and sisters. Hopefully tonight will be the final session pertaining to the essentials of the fiqh of the beginning of the fasting of the month of Ramadan. And so far I think we have covered, I believe, I hope, enough of material from the standpoint of the Quran and the Sunnah and the rules of understanding the Quran and the Sunnah in accordance to the ulama rahimahumullah ta'ala jami'an, to elaborate on this question as it poses itself still even in our times in this country as to what constitutes the right way or the better way or the best way even to begin the fasting of the month of Ramadan, and for some perhaps the only way. And then we have, as you recall, we have first exposed the different opinions which we would categorize mainly into two or three. One that relies on the sighting, physical sighting. One that relies on unconditional computation, that is computing something. And then the other one perhaps that combines both sighting and computation, in this case computation of the probability of the sightability of the crescent for the first time anywhere on earth. And then we have first talked about the opinion that uses only calculation, only astronomical, mathematical computations to decide the beginning of the fast and the end of the fast, regardless of the sightability or the actual sighting of the crescent. And we have shown, I hope it was clear, we have shown with the many texts and comparisons of the texts and the opinions of the others that is clearly contravening the texts, the explicit texts and the explicit command of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who said, what did he say? Do not. So that's the most important one. لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال. Do not begin to fast. Do not fast until you see the crescent. He did not only say صوموا لرؤيته. He did not only say fast when you see it. That, by the way, to the logicians in law and Sharia, that can open It's about something, 5 or 6 pages. So that's the first part that we responded to, and that we are at least for reasons of safety and logically we feel compelled when we study the logic of that to have recourse to the citing. But politely said, the least we can say is we can surely say we are sure that we're following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other side cannot say that. All they can say, we may be following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because even their arguments, because I know them personally, hafidhahumullah, their arguments is, they're saying to the likes of me, the citing is not the only way. The argument is the citing, you cannot claim they are telling the likes of me, and which I'm only a follower of the ulama of old, that you cannot say that the only means is citing. This is also a means. So in other words, they are certainly acknowledging that their way is, maybe they're right. But they are sure that citing is for sure obeying Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other one, maybe. But when we argue the question in a juristic Shari'i sense and in a logical Shari'i sense, their approach is very weak, to speak in scholarly terms. And then we go to the second opinion. Khalas, let's use alhamdulillah citing, and citing is certainly pleasing to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam for sure. Now, citing how? Globally or locally? We answer that also. That speaking of global citing is an opinion definitely upheld for centuries by the ulama, and that nowadays we have a problem with that. The problem with that is what? That there are claims of citing which have been verified to be erroneous and false, and not once, not twice, not 3 times. I have been following that for probably now 15 years, too many times. And we showed a sample or samples of the opinions even of the scholars, rahimahumullah ta'ala, the main scholars in Saudi Arabia by that year and before, who have always said, all rahimahumullah ta'ala, that the best opinion they subscribe to and their school of thought is that to follow, they're saying to the Americans, to the Europeans, to Kada, you follow your own local sightings. He said that's the better opinion that we advise you to follow. And I showed you some of those letters, and I will show them again briefly today, inshallah ta'ala. So that leaves us with the alternative, the safest alternatives, for practical reasons because of false claims of citing, and for textual reasons, because the famous text of Qurayb rahimahullah ta'ala radiallahu ta'ala anh, and related by Imam Muslim and others, which in the incident in the time of Muawiyah's Khilafah, or Muawiyah's ruling, between Damascus and Medina, and the Sahaba in Medina, the likes of Hibru al-Ummah, the scribe of the Ummah, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, who said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is he who ordered us to use citing locally. He said that, radiallahu ta'ala anhu ardah, and therefore he said, I'm not going to follow the citing of Damascus, where even the king or the Khalifa of the Umayyi dynasty at that time resided. I'm not going to follow that. I'm going to follow our local citing in Medina, because he said that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered us to do, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and that's the opinion that is safest indeed. You go with me, you follow. This page here, it is, as I showed it to you, I'm going to briefly mention it again, that one, yeah. This is, This is an incident, one of many, the incident of January 6th, 2006, I think, or the year 2000, when it was announced that Eid was on a Friday, and that the crescent was sighted in Saudi Arabia, it is said, and then things followed. Even ulama talked about it. This is, for example, this letter here that you see. It's a letter from the Amin Aam Lajnat Rasd al-Ahilla wal-Mawaqit, the General Secretary for the Arab Union of Astronomy and Sciences and Social Sciences, I think it says here, where he actually spoke of that incident. And at the end he says, إلا أن إعلانا, at the end, the last paragraph, all of that is explaining what happened. يخالف كل قوانين العلم بثبوت رؤية الهلال يوم الخميس من قبل دولة واحدة فقط جعل ملايين المسلمين يفطرون يوم الجمعة ولكن هنالك دول تثق بعلماء الفلك فيها وتؤمن بالعلم وبدقة الحسابات الفلكية أثبت أن إلى غير ذلك. The point is that, and you can read it also here in English, that the decision to have ended the fast on the basis of that sighting was untenable. And that, as a matter of fact, during that night that it was claimed to have been sighted, there was a solar eclipse in a part of the world, and it was still on, that eclipse was still going on at the time when the claim was made to have sighted the crescent, which is impossible by every stretch of science and of knowledge for millennia, not only for centuries. So this is the scientists' response, scientists who also, alhamdulillah, know some ilm as well, and you can read it, it's there also in English. The next letter, the next one, which I showed you also, this is a letter from a Sheikh at that time, Muhammad al-Salih al-Uthaymin. Some of you have heard of him. He was the top mufti of the land in those days, and people in that part of the world and some people in other parts of the world follow their views and their opinions. And it is in this, and this is his handwriting as well, in which he says, in other words, basically, that when such a thing occurs, when a conjunction occurs, when khusuf al-shams or kusuf al-shams, a solar eclipse, occurs anywhere in the world, and it is on at sunset of a claim of sighting anywhere in the world, then he says, every scientist knows of old and of now, and every faqih knows of old of now, that that's impossible. Because that is, he said, sunnah min sunanillahi fi khalqih. This is a law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His nature, in what He created subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that yes, He can do what He wants. But He subhanahu wa ta'ala also told us that there are rules and laws that He created, and that as far as we're concerned, we cannot violate them. And therefore, that sighting like that cannot be construed to be true. So he says here, for example, I'm going to read a few words, and then you have the translation next to it on the left side. He says, إذا وقع كسوف الشمس بعد غروبها في أي مكان من الأرض فإنه يتعذر أن يكون فيه اليوم التالي أول شهر جديد. وذلك لأنه من المعلوم عند المحققين من أهل العلم شرعا وأهل الخبرة حسا أن سبب كسوف الشمس حيلولة الحس أو أن سبب كسوف الشمس الحسي حيلولة القمر بينها وبين الأرض. ومن المعلوم عند العامة والخاصة أن دخول الشهر لا يكون إلا حيث يرى الهلال بعد غروب الشمس متأخرا عنها، فإذا كان كذلك فإنه لا يمكن أن يحكم بدخول الشهر في الليلة التي يقع فيها كسوف الشمس بعد الغروب، لأن ذلك مستحيل حسب العادة التي أجرى الله تعالى في مسير الشمس والقمر. قال الله تعالى: وجعل الليل سكنا والشمس والقمر حسبانا، إلى غير ذلك. These, I just wanted to read to you the text originally, the meaning of which I already mentioned to you, confirmed here by the Sheikh, rahimahullah ta'ala, Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymin, and that is acknowledging that there are mistakes done. There are claims of citing which are in the realm of the absolute impossible, not in the realm of the probable only, but in the realm of the absolute impossible, such as this case. The next letter, which I also showed you last night, I made an error. I want to correct that. This letter is a letter addressed to Fadilat al-Sheikh Abdullah bin Mani'. This letter is a sample letter addressed to the Sheikh Abdullah bin Mani', informing him about these issues and asking them to act, rahimahumullah ta'ala. And acting indeed they did. In view of what we just mentioned, for example, of the response of Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin, rahimahullah ta'ala. The next letter that I showed you, what was that letter about? This fatawi, Islamic fatawi, in this case, this fatawi by the third most prominent of the ulama at that time in that land, Abdul Aziz bin Baz, Muhammad Ibn Uthaymin, and Abdullah al-Jibreen. All of them in the question about now citing the hilal in one part of the world, in one part of the Muslim world, or one part of the world, does it compel others who have not seen it to follow? The answer I told you by these ulama was what? No, you don't have to. You may, but you do not have to. I argued all of them, and I'm going to read again a few of that, so that just to make sure I am held responsible for what I said, and that I read them as well, and the meaning as I explained. So, the question, السؤال يتفاوت ظهور هلال رمضان أو هلال الشوال بين الدول الإسلامية، فهل يصوم المسلمون عند رؤيته في إحدى هذه الدول? The question already mentioned to you. In other words, do we have to fast upon sighting it anywhere? جيم, the answer. مسألة الهلال مختلف فيها بين أهل العلم، فمنهم من يرى أنه إذا ثبتت رؤية هلال رمضان في مكان على وجه شرعي فإنه يلزم جميع المسلمين الصوم، وإذا ثبتت رؤية هلال شوال لزم جميع المسلمين الفطر. He mentions first the first opinion, the opinion that, yes, there is that opinion that say if it is cited anywhere you must follow. وهذا هو المشهور من مذهب الإمام أحمد. He says this is the most prevalent opinion in the school of الإمام أحمد بن حنبل. وعلى هذا فإذا رؤي في المملكة العربية السعودية مثلا وجب على جميع المسلمين في كل الأقطار أن يعملوا بهذه الرؤية صوما في رمضان وفطرا في شوال، واستدلوا على ذلك بعموم قوله تعالى فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم، وعموم قوله تعالى إذا رأيتموه فصوموا وإذا رأيتموه فأفطروا. So he mentions yes, that opinion exists, and therefore if it is cited in Saudi Arabia in accordance with that opinion, then others anywhere in the world who receive that information should also begin fasting in accordance with that opinion. And what of what they relied on is the ayah فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ, who sees or who witnesses the month, let him fast. If you see it, and the text of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you see it, fast. If you see it, and undo the fast. And then he said ومن العلماء من يقول أنه لا يجب الصوم من هلال رمضان ولا الفطر في شوال إلا لمن رأى الهلال أو كان موافقا لمن رآه في مطالع الهلال، لأن مطالع الهلال تختلف باتفاق أهل المعرفة، فإذا اختلفت وجب أن يحكم لكل بلد برؤيته، والبلاد التي توافق في مطالع الهلال فهي تبعا له وإلا فلا. This is now, he says, the second opinion of the ulama is that no, if the ru'ya is not seen in a specific land, they do not have to follow the others unless it is in the same matla', and we spoke about what the matla' was. And he says, and this opinion is the opinion وهذا القول هو اختيار شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية. This school for the Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is very important. رحمه الله تعالى. He says this is the opinion of Sheikh al-Islam, as he was called, رحمه الله تعالى, Ibn Taymiyyah. واستدل على هذا بقوله تعالى, and he mentions also the opinions of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah and what he relied on. By the way, he relied on the same texts also to say that they mean differently. And then at the end he says, رحمه الله تعالى, الشيخ ابن عثيمين, وهذا لا شك وجه قوي في الاستدلال ويؤيده النظر والقياس. In other words, he favors this opinion, the second opinion, by saying, وهذا, that is this opinion, there is no doubt, is a strong opinion in argument, and it is supported by logic and by qiyas and by analogy. So, and he is speaking on behalf of all of these ulama, rahimahumullah ta'ala. The next page is a translation of that. The next page, this one was, I told you, the letter also signed by, addressed also to Samahat al-Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymin. It was addressed to him upon this fatwa that I just read to you before. Somebody asked him, he says, فَلَقَدْ اطَّلَعْنَا عَلَى فَتْوَى سَمَاحَتِكُمْ فِي كِتَابِ فَتَاوِي إِسْلَامِيَّةِ. We have indeed read your fatawi, your honor, of in the book Fatawi Islamiyya, which I showed you, pertaining to حول رؤية الهلال في بلد لا تلزم جميع البلاد بأحكامه, that citing the hilal in one country does not require that it is followed in other lands in which it was cited. He said, we have read your fatwa, that's the case. He says, the question is, فَهَلْ يَنْطَبِقُ هَذَا عَلَى رُؤْيَةِ هِلَالِ عِيدِ الْأَضْحَى? Does this apply also pertaining to the sighting of the crescent of Eid al-Adha, the Eid of sacrifice? His answer, I said to you, was yes. You may, absolutely, you do that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The answer, wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Al-hilalu تختلف مطالعه بين أرض وأخرى في رمضان وغيره. He says the concept of difference of matali applies to Ramadan and to other months as well. والحكم واحد في الجميع. And the ruling is the same for all months. In other words, whether it is Ramadan or the Hijjah, the same thing applies. Use local citing whether for Ramadan or for, you do not have to watch where Arafat is. He says, rahimahullah ta'ala, etc. And he says, and I advise that in your lands where you are, you follow what your Amir in your community or in your land will agree to do. Because he said, ولكني أرى أن يتفق الناس على شيء واحد وأن يتبعوا ما يقوله أمير الجالية الإسلامية في بلاد غير المسلمين. And that you follow the Amir in the Islamic community says in the lands of non-Muslims. لأن الأمر في هذا واسع إن شاء الله, because he says the matter on this issue is wide, walhamdulillah. He says إن شاء الله تعالى. Finally, I wanted also to read this for you. This is a telephone conversation at that time by one of our brothers between himself and Sheikh also and Sheikh ibn Uthaymin, and you read it in English. He says, I was, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. He says, I was troubled when I read emails regarding the discrepancies in deciding the first day of the Hijjah, which would mean that we will have to accommodate two separate dates for the day of Arafat and the Eid. I called Sheikh Muhammad ibn Uthaymin and asked him about this particular situation, and his position has relieved me. Alhamdulillah. He said, question he asked him, should we abide by the local sighting in determining the Eid al-Adha, or should we follow the pilgrim schedule? Knowing that North America's sighting of crescent may come a day before Saudi Arabia's sighting, as I told you last night, because that's where Allah created this earth and this natural process. The answer of the Sheikh was, yes, you should abide by the city you live in. Khalas, he said. That's his fatwa, his opinion. I'm talking about the ulama, even Saudi Arabia. Question, he he retorted the questioner, this means that we will fast the 9th of Dhul Hijjah of North America and pray Eid on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah of North America. He said, answer, yes. And this is what you should do without any haraj, without any feeling of unease or anxiety, said he, rahimahullah ta'ala. Simply to cover everything as much as I can before I'm going to open the floor for your questions, inshallah ta'ala. If there's anything that we said these days that was not clear or so, inshallah ta'ala. So, remember I was saying last night when I thought Isha was at 10 o'clock, because actually when I was in New York, Isha, they prayed it at 10 or 10:30. One of their arguments, our brothers from the Fiqh Council and so on, part of the things that they have, listened to the public, and some of the public who want to influence. Let me tell you that for true. Some of the public we have learned to want to influence the ulama in making changes, even if the changes could be disobeying Allah Azza wa Jal. While some of us in the public, we believe something very strongly. We could be educated in physics, we could be educated in engineering, but not so educated in ilm and in shara and in akhlaq and in rawhaniyat. And then we think we're right and want to impose an opinion on the ulama sometimes to get them to do something. Because I was part of that decision making, of that fatwa process making, and we have received things like that. And part of that is the argument of hardship. The argument of mashaqqa, hardship, which was after years later was again accepted by people who write on these issues and opine on these issues, and was pushed for years, as I was in the Fiqh Council, it was pushed for years to produce change, just like a secular process. You can do that on dunya matters, dunyawi matters, observing the maslahah. And the maslahah of the ibad, because both secular law, in this case, secular law and sharia law, work on preserving the maslahah of the ibad in matters of dunya. But in matters of ibadat, in matters of kada, that's billah extremely wrong and extremely audacious and dangerous. So that argument was pushed, and then it started to be used as an argument later on. And then, the one who wrote on behalf at that time of the Fiqh Council, representing them, Muslims all over the world, especially in the West, he says, suffer a great deal of hardship, mashaqqa, due to physical sighting. And physical sighting is a cause of disunity and discord. Sometimes we are unaware of what we're saying. Physical sighting is a cause of discord and disunity. La ilaha illallah. Why am I saying this? Why is it terrible? Thank you. Why is it terrible? What is against the sunnah? Yes, but what makes me feel very uncomfortable? We already talked about the logic. Now it's not about logic. Now it's about ruh. It's about akhlaq. Meaning what? Well, Rasulullah ﷺ said, fast only when you sight it. So by saying that, Rasulullah ﷺ is creating disunity and discord, Ya Latif. Because that's what the word implies. Of course, the person doesn't mean that. Of course, this is a Muslim brother, alhamdulillah, who prays and goes to Hajj and cares for the deen, no doubt about it. But this is what it هذا لازم لذلك الكلام, as the ulama talk in their technical usage. This implies that. So be careful in the way not only you pose the questions, but what questions you pose. And therefore to say that sighting is a cause of disunity, Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam give laws which they know are going to cause disunity and discord. That's what it implies directly. And so if you feel it is doing that, that's because you or I who is doing that is not thinking right and is not feeling right. Either lack of logic or lack of heart in the right position. No, the rule of Rasulullah ﷺ cannot lead to discord and disunity. The opposite of it leads to discord and disunity. And that's why it led to discord and disunity, because it was the opposite of it. When there is one opinion, if we kept following one opinion, namely seeing it, that's what Rasulullah ﷺ said. When we introduce another one, then we introduce another choice, and people are going to be divided in this and that. Who create disunity? And then we include the third choice. If we include the third choice, we're going to include more disunity, because more people are going to spread thin in making choices, different choices. If we have one choice, all of us make one choice. If we have two choices, then the probability is people will divide to make those choices, especially if you describe those choices as acceptable. Isn't it? Please think with me. Don't say just yes. I'm not here to push an opinion. I'm here to cover myself with Allah Azza wa Jalla and with His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam first. And I'm here to inform you so that you make the right decision. I have made my decision. And my decision is between me and Allah Azza wa Jalla. That's how I worship Allah Azza wa Jalla. I'm here, you put me in this position as an Imam, and I must inform you. Inform everybody without fear of consequences. Alhamdulillah, and there are only khair. So you have to make the decision, informed, not because, you thought this is the right way anyways all the time, or this is the opinion of my group, or my party, or my country, or my culture, or my madhab. If you think that way, then you're not of me. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to, push the agenda of anybody. We're here, inshaAllah ta'ala, to learn together, to love Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on the basis of the rules of law, the rules of language, the rules of Shara, as they are clearly standardized and presented as we are continuing to learn together. Not all of us know much of that. So that we make informed decisions, my dear brothers and sisters. So we said they forwarded the argument of what? Mashaqqa, right? Hardship. That it is hard and it creates disunity and discord. Who is contributing to disunity and discord? Now, I want everybody to be equipped. Alhamdulillah, if you accept that and you understand that and you ask Allah to guide your mind and your heart to see truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood. If you had an opinion that is different, ask Allah to guide you. If this is the truth, to guide your mind and your heart to it. If this is not the truth, to keep your heart and your mind away from it. Ya Rab. I personally have looked at this for years before I have expressed this on paper. I do not write usually. And I asked to write for years. I said, no, my heart says don't. My mind says yes, my heart says don't. This, when I wrote, after a long wait of years, my heart says you do that too. What creates disunity is now, for example, the Fiqh Council was following citing. And citing and using computation only to verify the testimony. Like when we mentioned earlier, in the realm of the 100% sure and so on. That even, because people were not used to that even created people who followed that. Because there are people who used to say still, there is no room for science at all. Whether right or wrong. There's nothing to do with Shara. That argument, as we believe, is weak. And our ulama of old have shown that it is weak. Science is Allah's laws also. As long as they are definitive, we're not talking about conjecture. So the sunan of Allah in his, as the scholar mentioned it here, the sunan of Allah in nature are Allah's laws. We have to follow them. We cannot ignore them. You know? And then when they changed again to pure calculations, many people, including myself, said, no. Now you introduced another alternative. And this alternative will create divisions, more divisions. Despite the fact that it is extremely weak and untenable in our opinion. So it created more disunity because it provided more alternative to choose from. So I answered, Islamic law does not aim to ameliorate every hardship, but only excessive hardship. That is regular and not rare. And these are usuli rules. The Islamic Sharia indeed, yes, came to ameliorate hardships, but not all of hardships. Only the hardship that is regular, consistent, and not rare. And excessive. It must be excessive. And I began to tell you last night, before I had to run, that when we fast, is there hardship? There's hardship in fasting, but we must fast. That hardship is necessary, and it is once a year during a month. And the benefits of it are greater than the hardship we go through. Going to Hajj is filled with hardship, especially in those days, and nowadays still. Does it mean to ameliorate hardship, stop Hajj? That hardship is not intended to be removed. All of these are examples that not all hardship is intended to be removed. Qiyamul Layl definitely has hardship. So if Qiyamul Layl has hardship, let's remove Qiyamul Layl from being mustahab. Waking up for Fajr, for Salah, and coming to the masjid in the summer, in upstate New York especially, when nights are very short, even shorter than here, it's hardship. So let's change Fajr to after sunrise, as I suggested last night, and I told you, what do you think of that? Khalas. If you know these things, that's what the ulama have said. Here is also, in my opinion, lack of ilm, let alone lack of qalb. May Allah forgive me for this statement. So the argument of hardship is untenable. Not all hardship. Second, and I said, it cannot in good conscience be claimed that remaining awake past midnight, even if it were to be past midnight here, for one night a year or two, constitutes excessive hardship. Would you say so? Or even hardship. Neither for students, nor those in the labor force. True or false? You can't call that excessive hardship. Once or twice a year to stay up until midnight, or even let it be 3 o'clock in the morning. Once or twice a year. That does not come under the purview of hardship that is intended to be ameliorated in Sharia. It is not. No alim says that. Rahimahullah ta'ala of old. The example I gave also, guess what? How many of these people of us, or for whom some students of ilm like these or scholars are caring to remove hardship for them? Of those, if not the scholars themselves, how many of those, or scholars, and of you, and of the Muslims in America, stay up watching television until midnight, until 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, once a week, twice a week, once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month? How many? You will find? Thank you. Millions. They do that so regularly, and that's not hardship. And they can do that. And these same people are arguing, or they're arguing for them, that staying up in ibadah, because awaiting the crescent and waiting for it is an act of ibadah. Once or twice a year constitutes hardship. It is untenable. Logically, it's untenable. Culturally, it's untenable. Habitually, certainly it's untenable in the Shari sense, in the juristic sense of the definition of mashaqqa. It cannot be an argument. Moreover, it is difficult to appreciate how unconditional astronomical calculation is going to lead to greater unity, given that it is a significant departure from centuries of scholarship and local tradition. If anything, it will lead to increased disunity. It adds more opinions, albeit, I believe, erroneous opinions for the public to select from. My dear brothers and sisters, the intent by all of this, as I have come to this, alhamdulillah, overall wonderful, hospitable community and warm community overall, the intent was, as I have done before in other places, to inform. وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Inform, remind. For reminders are beneficial to those who have Iman. Yes, as Muslims, we demand to be informed. We demand to be informed in a Shari sense, in a legal sense, in a moral sense, in a spiritual sense, so that we make our decisions. Because each one is responsible with Allah Azza wa Jal. Even if you follow somebody, you will be held accountable. Why did you follow that somebody? Why did you follow that opinion? And you have to have the right answer. You have to have the right answer, depending on your status, your condition, your level of knowledge, your sincerity. You have to have an answer. You cannot say, I followed Ya Rasulullah, I followed Ya Allah, because it was the opinion, that my friend was having, or my group was having, and that's I felt strong about it. You cannot say that. The best you can say, if one is not able to discern these things as a scholar or as a true student of ilm, you can say, Ya Rasul, Ya Allah, I honestly, and I was open to anything, and up to the point where I was, the information I received, I followed the scholars my heart felt comfortable with and my mind felt comfortable with in obeying you and your Rasul. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I had no knowledge except the Alim X and the Alim Y. Did you ask to be informed? Yes, Ya Allah. But I was not informed. Maybe Allah will say, go Ya Abdi, I forgave you, because Allah is merciful. But if we followed on a basis of whims, on a basis of building coalitions, or building kada, or building partisanships, or kada, or political partisanships, or kada, then you have not done it for my sake. And you were wrong. But if, Ya Allah, I did my best to be informed, I listened to what I was told, and to the level of intelligence I had at that point, with all open heart and pleading to you to guide me to the truth, this is what I followed. Walhamdulillah, my abd, you're fine, whether you're right or wrong. Right? إذا اجتهد الحاكم فأصاب فله أجران. وإذا اجتهد فأخطأ فله أجر, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. If the person equipped to make judgment and decision, equipped, hakim, equipped to make decisions or judgments, performs ijtihad on some issue, does his best scholarly struggle to some issue, searches, finds, and so on, and then is led to the truth in some matter, truth with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that person has double reward. And if they are led to other than the truth, having done their best and they were equipped scholarly to do so, and that we'll talk about Saturday in the seminar that I hope all of you will attend. If equipped in a scholarly way and made the wrong decision, Allah will still not only forgive him, but He's give him one reward, not double reward. But a person who was not equipped in a scholarly way and so on, and argues and pushes opinions and this and that, that person has only punishment, wal-'iyadhu billah. At this point, inshallah, my dear brothers and sisters, as I said, meaning to inform ourselves that we make the right decision. My decision, as you know, obviously is clear to you as to what it is on the basis of the arguments. I pray and I hope, inshallah ta'ala, that as days pass, I will know more of you, inshallah ta'ala, and that the decision I will definitely suggest to the board is to start on the basis of citing, no other means. Citing, local citing in accordance to America. And that's what I have been doing for years. And there are people, alhamdulillah, all over the United States who follow the same as well. And there are more of them with time. While keeping our hearts, alhamdulillah, merciful and compassionate for all. There are those who make genuine mistakes. And for those whose mistakes are on the basis of whims and hawa, we also pray that Allah will guide them and will guide us all, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have another 5 to 7 minutes before Salatul Isha. If you have any question about which that is intended to clarify things I have said that you didn't understand, something pertaining to that, pertaining to ilm, not to conjecture, please, you're free to ask. Before brother, last night had the question, and I said tomorrow we'll have question and answer session. Is the brother here? Yes, that's you. So you have the first question. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah. Who raised his hand next? Yes, please. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I cannot really hear you because your voice, mashallah, is special. And the way I cannot really hear every word you say. Come closer, please. Jazakallahu khairan.
My question, I follow global science. I have been the whole time. My question, the argument between the local sighting and the global sighting. When you give the example, for example, in Saudi Arabia, if the expert or the scientist think for whatever reason, other than aside from the eclipse, it is very difficult to sight the moon, but there is always obviously a process on how to sight the moon. If the condition that's set forth by the Prophet ﷺ, if we have 2 witnesses or more, they sighted the moon, they want to be truthful. Should we question them or we just follow?
Yeah, Jazakallahu khair. Should we question eyewitnesses who claim to have sighted? Nowadays, my answer is yes. No doubt about it. Nowadays, my answer is yes. Why? Because we had a pattern that developed of sightings that were inaccurate. Verifiably inaccurate. As you have seen here is an example of clear inaccuracy. This example didn't happen only once, more than once. And the examples of having been sighted in the realm of where the telescope itself cannot sight has happened many years, almost every year. هذه واحدة. So we have to verify. I have read something, it was available for you to read, that in one of those letters, that the committees assigned, for example, in Saudi Arabia, the committees assigned in different cities to sight on these occasions and other occasions do not see anything. And there is a sighting somewhere else. Because the rule there is not only those committees that are assigned, that have scholars and astronomers and others, If they don't see and somebody else outside of the committee said, I saw, they accept it. And these committees have not cited, for example, in many years. And many other reasons. The other reason I mentioned also last night, my dear brother, is it is factual, sunnatullah fi khalqih, that if it is cited in the East, at Maghrib in Saudi Arabia, it will be more citable in Morocco, more citable in the United States, for sure. But when it occurs years after years, when citing was even impossible in North America, then it was even more impossible in the east of that. One country, in my observations, pertaining to the Arab world I'm talking about, one country, Morocco, seems to always do it right, in accordance to astronomers and my final observations for 10 or 12 years. Apparently it's even more than that. In Saudi Arabia, in other countries, for example, with all due respect, I'm sure there are mistakes, it is cited, but in Morocco, it is not cited in accordance exactly to accurate science because they are in the realm of the impossible. If it is cited in Saudi Arabia, it must be cited in Morocco. And it is more so that it must be cited in the United States. Because in the United States, sometimes we could cite it before Saudi Arabia, even by as much as a full day, but not the opposite. So all of these, my dear brother, Hafizakumullah, led to the addition of the analogy of, as you know, in courts of law in Sharia, if eyewitnesses come and claim things, there is tazkiyah, to the concept of the tazkiyah of the eyewitnesses, which was added in Islamic history when people started to lie more in courts. Imam Abu Hanifa and others added the concept of tazkiyah of the witnesses. In other words, what we call in modern law, what? Cross-examination of the witnesses to make sure they're telling the truth. You know nowadays also, if you take two eyewitnesses and claim we have seen somebody killing somebody, it has happened. And people have gone to jail for the rest of their lives and they were innocent and found innocent 20 years later after the development of genetic science and genetic fingerprinting, etc., and to have been found innocent. So the concept of tazkiyatu al-shuhud, cross-examination of eyewitnesses, has been part of our Islamic fiqh centuries ago. Just to double check. People make errors. As the ulama have said, nowadays we have satellites, a lot of satellites in the sky and so on and so forth, that the person who goes and sees outside could see, a thin appearance of a satellite that looks from very far, and scientists have said that, looks very far to the uninitiated, looks like a newborn crescent. And there are many of them in the skies, they said, etc. فالله تعالى أعلم هذا الحق. Next question. Yes, please.
How do you define the local region for the local site? Because in the past what we have observed that people in the Caribbean, some people also consider it as a local site.
It's ijtihadi matter. It's an ijtihadi matter because those who say that, they're going to actually do a semi-global sighting. Because local sighting, remember, could you please go? Yes, it is there. Local sighting should be now scientifically defined properly. The matla is where the parabola is. All the parabola inside of it is the same matla. So outside of it, even if it's 100 miles or 50 miles, it is not in that matla. And the example of Qurayb, remember in the time of Muawiyah, Sidna Muawiyah, between Damascus and Medina. Shahada is one thing. Then you pose the question different. What do you mean, can we take a shahada?
I mean, how do you define the region for the local?
Khalas, that's what I told. The answer is the curve. Now, should we stick to that? If we stick to exactly that, we're doing sunnah also. If we stick to what we call semi-global, international, same country, you can do that too in fiqh. So we say we're in this country, wherever it is cited in this country, that's what the Saudis do, that's what the Moroccans do, that's what the others do, as long as it is correct citing, we do that. That's safe for us. But the fiqh-wise, if you follow each city your own citing, as long as it is within the same matla', you're fine in accordance with the shara'. And the shara' is easy, alhamdulillah. So if we saw it here in Plano, and they didn't see it in Austin, nobody should say to the other, you're a liar, as long as it is within the matla'. Khalas. But if we decide, alhamdulillah, that as long as we are citizens of this country, this is our country now, this is it. And we are west, we're not east. And alhamdulillah, hopefully we still don't have axe to grind politically and militarily and kaza, and to force opinions on others. We're free, enjoy that freedom. Enjoy that political freedom, enjoy it before it's too late. And part of enjoying it is to be united in what you do in this country. Enjoy it before it's too late. Khalas. And we do that. ونتوكل على الله ونسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العفو والعافية. Last question. Yes. غم عليكم في المعنى الحقيقي لللفظ مقابل المعنى المجازي لللفظ يقصد به clouded. المعنى الحقيقي لللفظ استعمال اللفظ في المعنى دائما يرجع إلى حقيقة استعمال ذلك اللفظ ولا يرجع إلى المجاز إلا إذا تعذرت الحقيقة. فغم عليكم يقصد به الغمام. هذا هو. الله يبارك فيك. That was the last question. I hope inshallah ta'ala things were clear. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all do that which He loves subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.